Hi guys, today we're going to make cake. Now I have my Betty Crocker super moist cake and I have my recipe here for a different cake. The different cake is called Mom's Favorite Yellow Layer Cake. Now they're both going to be a yellow cake. One is easier to make than the other. The easier one will be the box. That takes about 5 minutes to mix up. And then you bake it. The layer cake from the recipe, it takes 5 minutes to gather your ingredients and measure them out. And then it takes about 5 minutes to mix them together. So time-wise, it's about the same, but if you have the cake mix, you don't have to search for too many extra ingredients. The extra ingredients in the cake mix are a cup of water and 3 eggs. Now, my friend gave me eggs from her chickens, and they are different colors. This one is a blue kind of color. This one is a light brown kind of color, and this one is a dark brown with speckles. Now, I want you to see right here. You see how the rest of the egg is not speckly? Well, that's not a speckle. It's actually chicken poop. Yes, I'm not kidding. So when you get these eggs from your friend's mom, you want to wash them beforehand. When you break an egg, germs can go into the egg if you haven't washed it. So when you're getting eggs from the grocery store, they've washed it with a bleach and water solution. So in other words, they took a little bit of bleach and they took a lot of water and they washed the eggs with it. So let's take a moment and wash our egg. The other eggs that I had from my friend, I washed a few minutes ago. See, now it's nice and clean. I won't have any germs going into my cake baking process. Alrighty, right. Which do you want to start first? Do you want to do the one from the box or do you want to do the one from the recipe? All right, we'll do the one for the recipe. Sorry if you voted for the other. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to do something called creaming. And it's when you take the butter or the shortening and you beat them together with sugar. So I need 2 cups of sugar. I measured it out already. I'm going to pour it into my ginormous bowl. And then it says 1.5 sticks of butter. Well, I don't have any butter. So this week we are going to use something called shortening. And what I have is butter flavored shortening. Now it comes in these bricks. This is a little plastic boat that the brick is in. And it peels away just like that. Okay? And then you can see the brick of shortening. So I'm going to pull the brick out and see how I can peel the paper away. Pretty easy. Then I'm going to dump, literally, the paper shortening into the container. Now, 1.5 sticks of butter is actually 1/2 cup plus a quarter of a cup. Now, that means that I've got too much shortening here. So, before I start my process, I'm going to put the shortening on this saucer and cut off a quarter of a cup. And then just leave it on the paper that was its original container. Okay, so now I have a half a cup, plus I have a quarter of a cup of shortening. Now I've tossed them in here together. So the next thing I want to do is I want to take a mixer. Now this is called a hand mixer because you just grasp it with your hand. Now underneath are little holes. They look at me like eyes. This is the beater. There's a little tab sticking out there, and it matches with a little place in here that has an empty space. And listen, it just clicks in. See, it's not going to come out. Do the same thing with the other one. Find the tabs and match them up with the tab space and push and check. You always want to check because you don't want them flying off. That'd be a bad idea. Next thing I'm going to do, plug it in. Now in America, we have just regular old plugs, but look, one is bigger than the other. The one that's bigger, the tine that's bigger, has a little round part on it. And the tine that's smaller is just got a straight edge. If you look at the wall and the place to plug things in, one of the inserts is bigger than the other. And that's how you match them up. It's kind of a safety thing that our country came up with a long time ago. Now I'm going to put it on low. That means one click for me. But before I put it in, I am not going to touch this. I'm going to put it in straight down, and then I'm going to turn it on. It's mixing the sugar with the shortening. I'm moving the mixer around so that it will mix together, and then I'm going to turn it off. Now you see, it's not that dirty. I'm going to lay it on the counter, and this is what it looks like. That's just butter and sugar. Now the next thing the recipe says is it wants 6 eggs. Oh my gosh, 6 eggs, that's almost a whole box. Well, yeah, it is almost a whole box. I'm going to take this see-through container, it's clean, and I'm going to break 1 egg at a time into it. Now, why would I do it 1 egg at a time? Well, because sometimes, because eggs come from chickens, a live animal, there might be the start of a little baby chicken. Sorry, had to tell you that. Now, if you see any kind of blood in there, there's no blood. Then you want to throw it away. Since there's no blood, I can pour it into the sugar and shortening that I've mixed together. Now, how many eggs was it? That's right, 6. You're listening. All right, number 2, I tap it once or twice on the counter. That's 2 eggs. Now, if I tap it on the side of the plastic container, it's not going to work that well. It'll work okay, but you have to really struggle with it sometimes. So, tap, and then I stick my two thumbs together and I pull away each of the two shell sides. Pull them away from each other. Okay? I'll let you see the next one up close. That's 4 eggs. Now I'm doing a good job of counting. Okay? I have my container right here. I'll tap it on my computer. Has one really hard tap. Okay? Now I match up my, oops, I didn't tap it hard enough. There we go. Or not. Okay, there. See, I broke it that time. I'm going to put one thumbnail there and another one right next to it. And then just going to pull away. And the egg goes into that bowl. And I pull the eggshells away from each other. And then when they're done dripping, I put them in my trash pile. No blood. That's number 5. How many more do we get to do? Good. One more. Crack, pull apart, and pour into the bowl. Now, we've got sugar, shortening, and eggs all in our bowl. So, I'm going to use that's right, mixer. Again, I'm going to put it into the mixer and turn it on. And turn it around in a circle against the sides of the bowl. And I'm going to lift a little and stop. Now, sometimes you have something called salmonella. It is something that gets into your food and is not good for your tummy. Sometimes you have salmonella get into your eggs and then they're not good for you. So don't try the egg batter before it's cooked because you don't want to get food poisoning and get a tummy ache. All right, I'm going to pause and go get something. Okay, I'm back. I needed to get a bowl. When we're measuring out the flour, it's a really good idea to measure it into another container. Now, our recipe calls for 2 cups of flour. I've already measured out this one. Okay, that's 1 cup. Now we need another cup of flour. And so I'm going to take my spoon, it's just a big spoon, that I used to get the flour out a minute or two ago. And I have my package. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my measuring cup, put it right there beside you, and then I'm going to scoop into the measuring cup. I'm not pushing it down. I'm just scooping and putting it in, okay, until I fill it up. Now, when I fill it all up, then it's safe to pour in with the rest, okay? It got onto my computer. How silly. Okay, now I'm going to pour that measured flour into the bowl that I had it in. and set it aside. The next ingredient, it says to add a half teaspoon of baking soda and a half teaspoon of baking powder. Now we've done this together before. I have the one that says 1/2, okay? So 1/2 of baking soda, sprinkle over the flour, put the lid back on, and this is my baking powder. I'm going to scoop it up. See how I scooped it up? Now there's a little rim there. I'm going to scrape it against the rim so it's nice and even. See how that is? Sprinkle it over the flour. Okay. Next, it wants a cup of milk. So I have some milk in a container. I am going to open my container and I'm going to pour it into my 1 cup measure. Okay, here's a 1 cup measure that I have. So, are you ready for those ingredients? The interesting thing about taking your flour and spooning it, scooping with a spoon into another bowl is that it doesn't get packed down. If it doesn't get packed down, then it's not going to make your cake heavy and you're gonna be like, oh, that wasn't a very good cake. It makes it light, okay? All right, let's measure the milk. You did not see that. Pour, pour, pour. Good. Now we've got our cup of milk. And we are going to take our eggs, sugar, and shortening. And we're going to pour the milk into it. Okay? Now the funny thing about this is it's called mixing your wet ingredients together. When you mix your wet ingredients together, you take everything that's wet, basically. Eggs are wet. Milk is wet. Is flour wet? No, flour is not wet. Okay? And you put all your wet ingredients together. And then you turn on your hand mixer. But one last ingredient. It calls for a tablespoon of vanilla. Now vanilla is going to give it some good flavor. So I'm going to pour some vanilla into my measuring spoon and then pour it into the wet ingredients and set that aside. Now we are ready to turn on the hand mixer, add our milk, then we'll add the flour, baking soda, and baking powder to the mix. Are you ready? Because I am. I think this will be fun. Right. See? Milk gone. Alrighty, right. Here we go. Big noise. Now I'm going to add the flour. There we go. A little bit at a time. So I'm going to use this big spoon and scoop it into the bowl. I haven't turned off the hand mixer. And the hand mixer is mixing it in. Now, if you pour the whole bowl in, it's going to make a big poof, a big poofy cloud of flour. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to pour in 3, 2, 1. Oh, I covered it. Okay, I covered it up before it got to make the poofy cloud. Now I'm going to stop because everything's one color. Now here's the kicker, okay? Sometimes when you pour the flour in, it'll go poof and make a big cloud of flour. And then you sniff it up. You're like, achoo. So probably not your best idea. The directions on the recipe say it wants 350 degrees. So I'm going to go over to my oven and I'm going to turn it on. Sometimes we need Mom's help with this, sometimes we don't. Now, before I started the video, I opened the oven and I made sure it was all empty. You don't want anything in there while you're baking, because that's a bad idea. Now, I picked out this pan. It's the pan that we made the macaroni and cheese in, okay? And one more thing before we put the batter in. It's called batter after you mix it together. I'm going to take my spray, shake, 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 take off the lid, and I'm going to spray the sides and the bottom of my pan so that it doesn't stick. Okay? All right. Now I have a scraper and I am going to use that to scrape all the leftover stuff off the bottom of the bowl. Okay. Now the oven is preheating. Who remembers what preheating is from last time? Okay. Preheating is when the oven is heating up before you put the baking things in. Okay? Before you put them in. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to lift this pan. See, it's got the cake mix in it, the cake batter. And I like to drop it on the counter, a few inches from the counter. 5 times or 10 times. Now I did that 5 times today. What it does is it makes all the bubbles that are in it rise to the top. So you don't get these big ginormous bubbles inside your cake batter. All right, now I got my scissors. I'm gonna cut open the bag for the cake mix. And it says, pour it in. Preheat oven. Grease the bottom of your pan and the sides. Ooh, let's get a new pan. Got another pan. It's not the same as the other. Shake, shake, shake. Now I'm going to do the sides. Now I'm going to do the bottom. And now I'm going to set it aside. Okay, let's see what else it says. Mix, cake mix, 1 cup of water, 1/3 of a cup of butter, and 3 eggs in a large bowl with a mixer on medium speed. Then pour into the pan. Well, we can do that because we have the shortening left over from the last thing we made. So we're going to pick up the shortening. We put it all the way over here. And we're going to put it in. Okay. Shortening. All done. Okay. Now I'm going to put this in the sink so that I remember to throw it away. And then it said, your water. So I have 1 cup of water measured out. And then it said, how many eggs? Do you remember? Good job. 3 eggs. So I'm going to take those 3 eggs, and I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm going to take my eggs and break them once on the counter and then pull the eggshells away from each other and do that into my container. Now pour it in. Okay, how many eggs? 3. Okay, smack, crack open, and drop. Smack, crack open, and drop. Now, when I was teaching home ec to high school kids, I had a couple of girls who were afraid of doing that, of cracking open the eggs. Miss Rohrkasty, what if I make a big mess everywhere? Well, sweetie, that's okay. Messes can be cleaned up. Almost always, messes can be cleaned up. Okay? Already right. Next, we are going to pour the cake mix into the bowl where we have the eggs, shortening, and water. Just pour it in. It's okay. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay? Empty. Now, last step. Put it in. Turn it on. Move it around in a circle while you're doing it. Now I'm stopping it to check and make sure all of the shortening got broken up. Now I'll turn it on for another second or 2. And 3, 2, 1, stop. So I lift the mixer up off of the bottom of the bowl, then I stop it. Okay? All right. It's ready. That didn't take very long at all, did it? Now we're going to pour it in, just like we did before. We have our nice, beautiful scraper that's made out of plastic rubber, and it helps me to scrape the sides of the bowl so that we get everything out of the bowl. Okay? Then we see if the oven is done preheating. It says P-R-E on my oven. It's not done preheating yet. I want to wait until it's all done preheating. Now, remember like last time? While our cake is baking, we are going to wash our dishes. Now, this guy has a chart on the back. See the chart? Now, the chart says, what size is your pan? Well, my pan is 13 inches by 9 inches. So it has that right there, 13-9. And then this column is for bake time. Well, it says 28-33. That means 28 minutes to 33 minutes. Okay, we can do that. Let's see how long the recipe says. The recipe says the same thing. Goodness me, oh my. All right, let's put them in. The beep, beep, beep tells me that it's done preheating. Put that in. Oh, sorry about that. And put this one in also. Now, what can Miss Rohrkasty do with 2 cakes? Well, there are a couple things that I can do. First of all, I can make a layer cake. So I can have the bigger cake on the bottom and then put the smaller or skinnier cake on top. If I'm going to do that, I'm going to need icing. To make icing, you mix butter with something called confectioner sugar and a tiny bit of milk. Mix, 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 mix. And then you take your icing, scoop, and you spread it all over the top of the bigger cake. Then you take the smaller cake and set it on top. Put some icing on top of that. Then the icing that you have left over, you put on the sides of your cake because now you have a layer cake. You can write words on it like happy birthday, Mom. You can draw pictures like a lion or how about a ball? A basketball or a soccer ball or a football or a tennis ball or a baseball. So if you have a friend or a brother or a parent who really likes baseball, you can draw the picture of a baseball. It's pretty easy. It's got a circle, and then you make 2 half circles. A football's not that hard either. It's an oval shape. Tennis ball is really easy. There are all kinds of pictures online. You can just say, hey, Mr. Google, show me pictures. And look under images in your Google search engine. Get somebody to help you with it if you need help. All right, we're going to pause and we're going to let that bake for a little while. See you soon. All right, I took some time to wash the dishes. So see, empty sink. Now the next thing I want to do, my counter is clean. I want to take some time to make some icing. Now I have some margarine. Margarine is a lot like butter. A lot of us have it in our house, but butter is more expensive because it comes from milk from a cow. Butter is also called, margarine is also called oleomargarine, but usually that is a word that comes from somebody who's a lot older than me. My dad would call it oleo. Pass the oleo, please. So today we've got our nice empty bowl and we have something called confectioner sugar. Now I only had a little bit of confectioner sugar left in the bag, so I put it into a glass container. Yeah, tastes like sugar. It's a powder. Looks just like flour. So if you get the flour and the confectioner sugar mixed up, take your finger, lick it, put it on top of the one you want to taste, flour or the confectioner sugar, and then you'll know if it makes you go like that because it's not sweet, that's the flour. If it makes you go like that, then that is the confectioner sugar. Alrighty, right now I'm going to take a clean spoon and I'm going to take probably a half cup of confectioner sugar. Now, is it a good idea for me to use the spoon to scoop it into the half cup measure like we did with the flour? Yeah, totally. Okay. We're going to put our half cup into our bowl. That's about that much. Okay. This is a smaller bowl my friend gave me. I love them. All right. And then we're going to take a tablespoon of our margarine. Now what I do is after I measure, I take the back of the spoon and I scoop it out of the measuring spoon because then it doesn't get stuck on the measuring spoon. Now I'm going to smash it in. So you just smash, smash, smash. Smash the yellow margarine into the white confectioner sugar. It's going to take more than a minute. It's going to take more than a half a second. And so one of the reasons is because it's got something in it that makes it all powdery. And usually that's something called cornstarch. Now, another thing I can do is I can add a tablespoon of milk, or I can add a tablespoon of vanilla. Okay, so I'm halfway done smashing it in. Now I'm going to add my tablespoon and then stir, 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 stir. Now stirring makes the confectioner sugar break down. You ever seen how ice melts? Well, that's called breaking down. And when your ice melts, it goes into your drink and disappears. Well, vanilla is the same way. Vanilla is brown. It's made with pretty much two ingredients. Rum, which is an alcoholic drink, and the long, flat seed of the vanilla plant. Now, the long, flat seed is called a pod. It's called a vanilla pod. And inside the pod, you have teeny tiny seeds. I mean, they're so small. They're about the size of a petunia seed. Very, very small, like the grain of sand. All right, now I've put in my 1 tablespoon of butter and my 1 tablespoon of vanilla. And you can see it kind of moves. So that means it's not thick enough or stiff enough to be icing. So I'm going to add another half of a cup. Why am I only adding it a half of a cup at a time? Well, the reason is if you get it too stiff, then you have to add more butter or more vanilla. If you start with the vanilla and the butter or the margarine as your only two ingredients, and then you start adding the confectioner sugar, it's easier to tell when it's thick enough. Now, you don't want it to be as thick as the icing from the store that comes in one of those small buckets. No, you want it to be less stiff than that. You want it to be softer than that. Now, I'll show you again. See, this is still moving. It could pour out. So, last but not least, I'm going to add 1 more half cup. Now, I have a half cup plus a half cup plus a half cup. How much confectioner sugar does that mean I have? All right, you got it right. Good. It is 1½ cups of confectioner sugar. Now, 1½ cups of confectioner sugar is just right for a tablespoon of butter or margarine and a tablespoon of vanilla. You can see that it's still brown. I'm still smashing the sugar into the other ingredients, but look now, doesn't move, not so much. Since there are no eggs in here, I can taste it. So I put a little bit on my finger. Just right. All right, I'm going to put that aside because one of the big rules about putting icing on a cake is you cannot, should not, ever put your icing on the cake while it's still hot. If you do that, remember how we put butter in the icing? If you do that, then it'll melt into the cake. Then you won't have any icing. So you're going to want to wait. All right, let's check on the oven. Okay, two ways to check on the oven. There's often an oven light, so I'm going to press the button that says oven light. And then I can bend over, look in the little window, and see if it's done. So let's bend over. Ooh, I like that. It's golden brown, which means it's not too brown, not burnt. And then my timer is about to go off. So I need my hot pads to pick it up. Remember, our hot pads keep our hands from burning. There's the timer. Are you ready, guys? Stop on the timer. And then 1, 2, 3. Oh, that looks really good. Now remember, open the oven, count to 3, and that way the heat won't hit your face and burn you. This is the box cake. See, it's got little places where it's brown, little places where it's yellow. I can hear it making a crackling sound. The crackling sound is the butter, and it's kind of frying the bottom of the cake. How crazy is that? Now, the homemade cake was a larger recipe, so it's going to take another minute or two. So we'll push pause and then come back. Okay, the first cake that we took out of the oven has been sitting on top of the stove. The stove is turned off, it's okay. Cooling. And now it's almost time for the second one to come out. So I'm going to press oven light and I'm going to bend over and look. Ooh, it's nice and brown. Timer's going to go off in a moment or two. I'm going to turn off the oven light again. Now the other thing that I want to do is when I take the cake out, right after or right before, I want to remember to turn off the oven. So turn off the timer, open the oven, 1, 2, 3. Oh, it's not quite done. I can see how it's wiggling a little bit. So I will tell you though, the first cake came out. You see all those little holes? Those are air pockets. Now the air pockets give it a light feel so you don't get that stomachache. Also, one thing that you want to do before you decide that your cake is done, you can take a knife. This is a butter knife, so it has no edge to hurt me. And you want to take it and put it in, poke it in to your cake in a different place about 4 or 5 times. You can do it with a fork. If your knife comes out clean, that means it's all done baking. So we have a cake. What are we going to do with the cake? I think we should put our icing on it and give it to somebody special. In the meantime, I will see you later and have fun making this cake. Toodles!